So just read Absolution by VanderMeer. This would be the fourth book in the Southern Reach trilogy. So the first trilogy, you know what I mean. The first three were Annihilation, Authority, and Acceptance, and this is the fourth one. The first three came out in 2014. This one came out in 2024, so 10 years after the original trilogy. I bought this because it was on sale. It was like less than half off, super cheap. But in retrospect, I probably shouldn't have bought it. The original trilogy was good. It sort of wrapped everything up, but it still had enough of a mystery left that it didn't need any more, and this is more that it does not need. If I was being cynical, I might say that this book was written to sort of cash in on the success of the previous trilogy and try to sort of bring back that hype and that excitement, but maybe that's not fair. I found this one very difficult to follow. The prose in the original book was good, and it is good in this one as well, but it feels like he's almost cranking it up to 11 and making it as weird and almost incomprehensible. Not incomprehensible, but weird and so convoluted and strange to make the world seem weird and strange, but it just makes it a hard read. I know I'm a slow reader and I don't have great reading comprehension, but by the end of this, the final third of this book, I was just sort of not skim reading, but I was just reading words and maybe once in a paragraph I would sort of catch something that could help me realize what was going on, but I would have to stop and think about every single sentence if I was trying to actually figure out what was happening in this book, and it just wasn't worth it to me. So it's supposedly both a prequel and a sequel to the original trilogy. I would say it's just a prequel. There's no events that take place chronologically after the events of the end of Acceptance, when sort of the border seemingly disappears and the whole world gets consumed by Area X. But he claims that it's part sequel because of weird time travel stuff, where Area X is both colonizing forward in time but also backward in time. And so even though this book takes place back in time, Area X is also colonizing backwards in time. Anyways, so there's three main sections to it. The first one is very strange and very weird and very difficult to follow, but it is this character, Old Jim, this is 18 months before Area X is created. He is in Central reading a whole bunch of documents about stuff that has gone on the Forbidden Coast, or the Forgotten Coast. And apparently there was a whole team of biologists that went out there to sort of study the place, and there was also, and this was like 10 years before this time, so 10 years ago these biologists went out and they encountered this being called the Rogue, who turns out was like Whitby from the original trilogy, but who went back in time, but maybe one of Whitby's doubles. And then there's this alligator that they release, but then something happens to the alligator, and then the Rogue and the alligator are like teaming up. And it turns out the whole thing was meant to be a test of hypnosis and hypnotic techniques, which we see in the other books. But something goes wrong, and this Rogue does something that messes with the hypnosis and sort of kills them all, except for a handful that managed to escape. In the 10 intervening years, the Science and Seance Brigade that we heard about from the flashbacks in the second and third books, or the third book, I think, they sort of set up on the Forgotten Coast and are performing experiments and stuff. And to me, all of this felt like adding more mystery before Area X actually happened sort of took away from it. But I guess the argument is that there's time travel and that Area X started at a certain point, but also stuff before it arrived is still being influenced by it, because cause and effect are wacky. Like I said, the whole thing is super weird, and I think he made it overly weird to try and outdo the previous trilogy. Anyway, so the second section is Old Jim being sent to the area that would become Area X in 18 months to sort of figure out what's going on. And it's revealed that Jack Severance, who is the grandfather of the main character in the third book, he is using the Forgotten Coast to sort of money laundering and like grifting from the government, sort of running his own little thing there. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of weird stuff. There's like the rabbits that have these cameras on them that were, I think in the second book or the third book, where the Southern Reach put these rabbits into Area X to sort of scout it out. And apparently they traveled back in time to before Area X, and they're the ones that screwed with the biologist. And then there's the whole weird thing with the cameras that are like part biological because they were affected by Area X or something, even though there is no Area X in this at this time. Anyway, so old Jim goes back, and it's revealed later that he had some sort of psychotic break where he was on some mission for the government as a spy with his wife, and he made a mistake and got his wife killed, and the mission failed, and he sort of went crazy and lost his memory and became a drunk and was searching for his daughter. And it was like, does he even have a daughter? But I think he actually did have a daughter. Anyway, so they set him up in the Forgotten Coast as this barman, while he's also supposed to be doing investigations for Jack and for Central. And he gets this girl, this, I guess, young woman named Cass, who sort of pretends to be his younger daughter, which is really messed up. And the two of them sort of team up and try and solve the mystery of the rogue and whatever went wrong with this hypnotic experiment 10 years previously. And yeah, weird stuff happens, and it ends with old Jim being sort of killed by the rogue, which is again Whitby, I guess, and I'm the alligator, and it doesn't really matter. His daughter Cass escapes, and then Area X is created, like we saw in book 3, I think. That was the most sort of logical, the most comprehensible section, the most enjoyable to read, because it actually felt like things were happening, up until the end when it got really weird and I was just reading words on a page and it was really hard to follow. The third section, oh boy, it's like the POV of a Charles Bukowski character cranked up to 11. The prose is in third person past tense, but it's almost first person. It's still third person, but the language, it's like we're getting the thoughts of the character. There's a lot of not complete sentences, just sort of independent clauses and thoughts that you have to make sense of it, and lots of expletives. But this is following the character of, not Landry, Lowry. So Lowry on the first expedition into Area X, and he describes from his POV, but it's still third person. It's weird. All the events of the first expedition, but it's very strange and very hard to follow. And it's not like the expedition in the first book where it's like a normal expedition, but things are not quite what they seem. This is just completely wacky, crazy nonsense. We find out that one of the members of the first expedition, Karen Hargreaves, is actually the Cass from the second section, the fake daughter of old Jim, who's going back to sort of see him. And it's told that she gets out. So I always thought Lowry was the only surviving member of Expedition 1, but I guess Karen Hargreaves gets out as well. And like they run into beings that create doubles of them, and there's the whole lighthouse is being really weird, and stuff's being weird, and yeah, I can't even get into it. It's just a bunch of weird stuff, and it's all from the perspective of this just crazy guy who's on drugs the whole time. And maybe it's like the drugs that help him survive it, but Lowry is quite a character. It's kind of an enjoyable character to read, but it was so difficult to parse what was happening as this story went on. I can't even remember how it ended. I think it ended with Lowry just leaving Area X, getting out, and that's how it ends. I don't know. Anyways, that was Absolution. Not needed, not recommended. Just read the first 3 and call it a day. Yeah, this sort of just created more mysteries for the sake of mysteries and more weirdness for the sake of weirdness that I didn't feel added anything to the overall story. But if you really love the original story, then maybe you want more in this world, and here you go. You've got more in this world, and you probably love it. But not me.